Well, hello everyone. My name is Betsy Brick and I'm the Development Director of Early Music Seattle. And I'm delighted to have Alex Weimann, our music director, joining us today, where he's sheltering in place in Vancouver, BC. How are you doing, Alex?
Thank you, Betsy. I'm fine. I'm healthy. All my family is so far. So yeah, we are doing fine. Thanks for having me. Hope all is going well on your side.
Yeah, everything's going really, really well. Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you here. And so this has been quite a journey we're on. And I'd like to go back to sort of how the virus is affecting things. But I want to touch on another journey that has to do with how you basically, what led you to a career in early music. So when did you first discover early music and what about it inspired you to become a musician?
I think the desire to become a musician is older, but I really got in touch with the field of early music through an instrument, a musical instrument, really, which is the organ. I learned to play the organ in my teenage years, so as my second instrument after starting on the piano, and I was always fascinated by the instrument. The prime repertoire of it is really music that is amongst the oldest instrumental music we have. As a matter of fact, is organ music. So there's a wide range of beautiful pieces, and some of my favorite composers, namely Bach, wrote so much for the organ, and perhaps even the most Bachian music for that instrument. So that's how it came. And then through the repertoire, I got into harpsichord, which I didn't play before I was 20. And also then all those unbelievably many ways of making music together, chamber music, accompanying orchestra, choir and orchestra, and so on. So it really evolved from the organ.
Okay, great. And how does one go about pursuing a career in early music in the first place? What was the path like to do that?
I would say it as much chose me as I chose that path. I have a wide interest in music, and it's certainly not confined to early music. I listen to a lot of other music, and I could have even have imagined myself in another branch of music making. But early music does encompass a lot of what's important to me. One is the aspect of improvisation, so that not every note that you play is set in stone, as it would be with a Brahms symphony, where it would feel inappropriate to improvise somehow, even Beethoven for that matter. But our field holds a lot of freedom in that, and I love that. Also, I love the interdisciplinary between vocal and instrumental, that sort of mix also between sacred and mundane, and probably finally, and perhaps the most importantly, I love something that's a little more difficult to put in words, but it's a mix of gesture, word, really, so the meaning and music or sound. So to me, Baroque, or much more than Baroque actually, so even the classical and the pre-Baroque asks for a fuller concept of music. It's not just notes, it's really the gesture or the theater, the stage at the same time. And I found that always very appealing.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard it described quite that way, but that really is, I love that description. So what has been the most challenging part of being on this path for you, and what has been the most exhilarating?
Well, the most challenging, probably as a father of 3 children, is to sort of make secure you have some sort of a civilian existing livelihoods. Even though I consider myself privileged and successful enough to not really ever actually in my life had serious concerns, but it's still not the same, I guess, as a tenured position, which so many of us don't have anyways, I know. But I guess in the field of self-employed, that worry is, it comes with it, I think. You have to grow friends with it somehow. So I guess that would be the most challenging, is the lack of security really you have. Also the fact that, of course, that business is volatile, and it asks as such for a lot of change, and yeah, all these aspects make it difficult to not become panic and focus on what this is about, which is the study and the performance of music. And I think that's at the same time the exhilarating, if you want, or that's, I think, how you put it, part of it. So that's where I certainly draw my energy from. That source is just the beauty of what we do, the music that we study and have the opportunity to perform. So much of it is just really the greatest of musical heritage, I think, and that's also something that doesn't wear down, if it makes sense. So that in all the challenge, that doesn't seem to become less powerful over the years.
Right, right. So there are a lot of schools of thought around what early music actually is. How would you define it, and how does it differ from traditional classical music?
This is a very clear and justified question, but it's actually not that simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah. I think if we go back to in history, then the movement of early music is actually quite old. And we find the first academies of ancient music in the 18th century, really, and the bar line that a piece had to qualify to jump over was, it had to be older than 10 years to be considered part of that Academy of Ancient Music activities. So that's a lot of our contemporary music would qualify as ancient music. So I think the movement is quite old, and I think it became stronger, if I'm correct with that, in the early 1900s.
Okay.
Which I find interesting because at least for the continental Western music, those decades are decades of disruption or demolition, if you want. So the whole evolution of music history, I think, can be described as a continuum, pretty much to those 1920s, 30s, and then with both those world wars and the scrupula that an artist would feel in the 1940s after all those atrocities, to use words, to use notes, to do any of that. I think a German philosopher and musicologist, Adorno, once said, after Auschwitz, you can't write a poem anymore. It's impossible. So I think there's that huge disruption in a continuum of music making, which has a few side branches, if you want. One, I think, is that the idea of a performer-composer actually ceased to exist. So up into the early 1900s, there were those figures of Brahms still being one of them, who would perform and compose. So not just be a performer only. And I think that stopped at some point. And we have those composers as the century goes on, and performers, but hardly anybody who excels in both. At the same time, jazz becomes a very important motion. So I think in all of the turmoil, the turning to early music became stronger, searching for a authenticity, if you want, of music making.
Mm-hmm.
But then in a more commercial sense, the whole period performance practice, I think, is more of an invention of the record industry in
Ah.
the 70s and 80s, where the authentic way of doing it was sort of marketed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think every musician looks for that, I don't think that those pioneers like Harnoncourt or um, Gustav Leonhardt and all of those were actually thinking of themselves as the authentic way. I don't think they would have claimed that label, if it makes sense. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's rather the recording industry, who at that point of time was quite healthy and making a lot of money of that new idea. And ever since, the period performance practice has, I think, has spread. So you will
Yeah.
find it in every modern conventional symphony orchestra. Many of them use Baroque bows or adopt some of those techniques. I think when it comes down to everyday life, in a musician's life, it is studying a piece, trying to understand what the composer wants to tell. So you need to understand the context. Obviously, you need to understand the zeitgeist of a composition, and a very helpful way to understand it are the tools, are the instruments of that
Mm-hmm.
time. I don't think that means that you can use only those and only those in a certain way, even though each of us, as we study and progress, probably will have the idea of what it's supposed to be. But I think the truth is that there is no truth. And I think approaching pieces that would qualify as ancient, so older than 10 years, and by the instruments that the composer was having in mind writing them, with the means as we are able to understand of their time, but approaching them as something that's new and alive and interesting. I think that's in a sum what we try to achieve.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, in your opinion, what role does music play in our world and community, and how has the pandemic brought attention to the importance of the role it serves?
Well, I think um, it, especially at times like that, we should reflect, or we will reflect, naturally reflect on what's human, what's really deeply human. And I think art and music, for me at least in particular, are that. They are profoundly human, much more than lots of other activities that we spend so much time with. And to me, the most powerful thing about music, which probably is the reason why I devoted my life to it, is, and I love literature and I love paintings, is that it has the capacity to convey meaning without being meaningful, if it makes sense, or to convey an emotion without words.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be able to do that in a more immediate or more irresistible way. And yeah, to me, that there is an enormous potential in that, enormous potential of, in any kind you want to think, in any direction you can imagine, a potential of comfort, but also a potential of grief, of more raw expression of grief or desperation or hope.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I find it really difficult that even us musicians can't really resort to that comfort of making it together the way we used to, let alone share it with an audience. Because while I think the virtual world is priceless. It's immensely helpful, and I wouldn't know what to do without. It's just not the same. It's it will always be little quantum after quantum of information, and even though it's very fast and the pixels are so have such a high resolution that we supposedly can tell, it's just still not the same thing, because I think the experience of music in one room is exactly what happens between those moments of time. It's that flow, and yeah, while all those streamings and recordings are wonderful, and I really don't want to argue here, but I still miss the real thing.
Absolutely, I do too. So how have you been personally adapting to these rapid fire changes with COVID-19 and, as a musician, and what do you think has been the most challenging part of the journey for you?
Well, as all of my colleagues, we basically lost work from one day to the other. And for some of us, it perhaps came a little less unexpected than others, depending on, in Canada, for instance, which province you live in. So as depending on as how early the government would have reacted. I think both in Washington State and in BC, we were on the early side, because the first reported cases appeared there. And I think I can't really speak for your state, but certainly for my province, they reacted very, very diligently and quickly, and I feel very secure for that part. Actually, that's a very big part, I have to say. For the health system, that sort of trust that you have to have in the society and the administration, because it's more than any of us can take, right? It's only the community that can possibly master that. And so yeah, it's difficult to describe. It's a roller coaster of feelings, obviously. Being with Early Music Seattle, it has been very good for the musicians involved, because we are not dropped like hot potatoes.
Right.
The same is true for the organization in Vancouver that I work with, Early Music Vancouver, and the same is luckily true for the part-time job that I have with University of British Columbia. So this is all good. I feel held, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Feel the same for my family. There are a few things that worry me down the lane, if you want. One, of course, is the economical outcome of all that. None of us is able to imagine, and of course also the sanity that I still perceive around me in people with that situation of lockdown. It has been 4 weeks now here, and it's good, and the numbers are encouraging, but we all know at the same time that an answer hasn't been found, and
right.
This is all of course worrisome, cumbersome. I don't know. So yeah, it's a mix of feelings. On a more day-to-day level, we are managing well. As I mentioned before, I'm lucky that we don't live in Vancouver really, but in the area really, where you can afford a little more space, even a little backyard, and we have nature around you, so it's easy to go out and take a walk by yourself or with your dog, really. On the dike, and of course weather is wonderful, and I'm a gardener, so
Oh, great.
that's actually this year will be more successful than in previous years, I would say. So it's we all take it with gratitude to be where we are, and we wish the same to everybody we know and don't know. And it's my hope is, and optimism wouldn't even be the right word, because it's easy to be an optimist, but it's more difficult to be hopeful. My hope is that we learn from that we need to work together, you know, on every level. We can, because that's the way to get through that, and that's the way to build again.
Absolutely. Do you see the presence of this virus in our world affecting the nature of live musical performances in the future?
Well, it certainly does right now.
Yes.
I mean, you can operate with hopes and trust and build on the desire that will grow for live performances. So I'm not giving that up. I was never one of them who thought this is going to be dying. I don't believe that. You know,
Right.
certain things will always be alive, but maybe a small niche. Yeah, so this is certainly my hope. Of course, to perform live is not something that happens on a few shoulders. The audience sees only the tip of the iceberg. It's big organizations and a big group of volunteers and a big group of supporters. So it's a very, it's a team, really. And of course, right now we can't do that, what we are best at as that team. So that is, I just hope it won't last too long, that it will, it can be dormant for a while. And even in that phase, a lot of things can grow, the roots can grow perhaps, and the desire to start up again will grow, but it shouldn't be too long.
So what are you most looking forward to when we get on the other side of this crisis and all of this social distancing, other than conducting and performing with the Seattle Baroque Orchestra, of course?
The short answer is nothing, really. Conducting and performing is almost the end of what I'm looking forward to. What I'm really looking forward to is to start the first rehearsal and to have it again, you know, just be together and make music. And right now I feel like not talking at all for 3 days of rehearsal and just play through the music, you know, and enjoy what we just can't have right now, and which cannot be replaced. I mean, maybe the online and 5G technology will make it possible to do real time playing together online, and yeah, that would be a big step already. It would be, I'm not sneezing at that, but still to be in one room and feel the music and feel the vibrations of the lower instruments and all of that. That's what I'm looking forward to mostly.
We could all use that therapy right now, I think. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Alex. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today, and just wish you all the best with everything, and just stay well and healthy, okay?
Same to you. Thanks for having me, and you all stay healthy.
Good to see you.
Likewise.